Hello, BookTube. I have a little bit of mail for you today. I would have had more, but quite a bit of packages got opened off camera. So we'll have to do some sort of new arrivals or book haul video or something like that so that that doesn't just get lost. But we do have a package and a box here. A package, a box, a sleepy bean, and a dying plant. Because I cannot keep plants alive. I simply cannot do it. And I can't look to the experts for help because they say the opposite things with equal passion, with equal conviction. Uh, this is a lavender plant. For those of you who don't follow my sexy Instagram account, this is a lavender plant named Larry. And I got him just a couple of days ago, and he's already obviously dying. I was told lavender plants like the shade and no water. I was told that lavender plants like the sun and plenty of water. I was told that if a plant looks like that, you must water it. I was told that if a plant looks like that and it's a lavender plant, you must absolutely under no circumstances water it. I have no idea. I am not a gardener. But I thought at least he deserved his moment on camera before I'm fairly certain that he's just going to be withered grass in a couple of days. I don't know now at this point whether to water him or not. No idea. I was planning originally on going out tomorrow to get fertilizer. There's a little plastic card in that pot that tells me that just basic garden variety, quite literally, fertilizer is all that a potted lavender plant needs. And I, of course, don't have anything like that, so I was planning on going out tomorrow to get some. And it doesn't look to me like he's going to live long enough for that to happen. But at least dogs and books that come my way are guaranteed good handling. So let's see what the first package is. We've got a package and a box. So let's see what the first package is here. Oh, 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 how wonderful. Okay, this is... I did an impromptu library tour the other day, just to keep my hand in, because I've stopped library tours and I get lots of emails about it from all of you. And one of the things that we encountered in that library tour was book 2 and book 3 in a historical fiction series. And I mentioned at the time when I was doing that I didn't have book 1. And the author, the very nice author, very kindly sent me book 1. This is Jane the Queen by Janet Wharton. And this is about Jane Seymour. And the whole series, the Seymour saga, the trilogy is about the Seymour family. And it's wonderful. You really will thank yourself for getting these books and reading them. Because the Seymour family was absolutely crucial. As you know, if, for instance, you've read Wolf Hall. They are there. They are lurking around. They are not the Cromwell family, the Arravist Cromwell family. They are not the Duke of Norfolk and his family. They're not the Boleyns, but they are definitely there, and they know what they want, same as anybody else in the Tudor court. They want to rule that court. The surest way to do that is to have not only a queen, but an heir. And Jane Seymour famously provides both. And the reason I didn't have the first one of these, I think, is that it was lost to the ravages of time and tide, because unlike the other two, which came to me like this one from the author, the first one came to me under the auspices of the Historical Novel Review, where I was for years and years the U.S. and worldwide indie editor. So if you self-published a book, a historical novel, I used to get bucket loads of them and cover lots and lots of them. I actually miss that. There are lots of things like that that I don't see anymore now that I no longer am in that job. But that's how I originally found this. And, you know, one thing I will say about having that job, I got indie historical fiction just of every kind and description. Bucket loads of it. Big mailboxes full of it. And I dutifully read it all, of course. I took that job seriously. And one thing that you definitely notice when you're in a position like that is something that I have been saying on this channel since I've had this channel, which is that indie publishing or mainstream publishing, that is not in any way a gauge of quality. It isn't, oh, you indie published because you couldn't hack it in the mainstream. It isn't that at all. There are all sorts of factors that play in. Mainstream publishing, of course, is famously exclusionary. It does not want you to be part of it. There are now, in 2023, There are 100 more hoops to jump through than there were in, for instance, 1923. It's meant to keep you out. It's very, very, the 21st century term is gatekeepy. It's very, very gatekeepy. But while it's been excluding its own source of renewal, indie publishing has been getting better and better. This looks no different, feels no different, is edited no different than any other trade paperback historical novel that you would find on a table at your bookstore. And I remember a time not that long ago, comparatively speaking, 30 years ago, when that would not have been true for an indie published book. All but unless you paid a king's ransom, that would not have been true. Now it's more true than not. And it doesn't matter anyway, because that is not the difference between those two. I'm glad that the physical appearance differences have eroded, because that was never about that anyway. It's only about the talent of the writer. That's all. and when I was getting those mail tubs full of indie published books, boy, oh boy, did that quickly become obvious. That quickly became obvious. I'm not even talking about a question of design. Although I strongly think when you are an indie publisher, everything is you. No one's doing anything for you. So you do everything yourself. And that very much includes the presentation and design of your book. This is an extremely well presented and designed book. Like I said, it looks indistinguishable from the stuff that is produced by a design team at a mainstream publisher. You really want that to be your goal with self-publishing. I know we always joke about judging a book by its cover, but you really want that to be your goal. The last thing you want if you're indie publishing a book is to play into the prejudices that still cling to indie publishing. Don't make it look indie. And also, don't make it read indie, which is a lot harder to do, because that means you've got to have an editorial team in place of your own. It's not going to run through one rung after another at Simon & Schuster. You've got to do that. You've got to hire an editor, for instance, maybe even a spell checker, a proofreader, and an editor, different people, a team of people. You've got to outlay some money to buy professional services. But once you've done that, it's all going to come down to talent. And these are really good. The Seymour saga is really, really good. And there were plenty of books I got. Bless their authors. I came to know a lot of their authors that weren't good, that weren't ready for prime time, which the bookstore, the new release table on your bookstore, or the Amazon equivalent, is prime time. You ought to have the awareness to know whether or not you're ready for prime time. You ought to have awareness enough to know that. It's the very first step that you need to do to enter into the deep end of the pool, which is publishing a work for consumption for money. So when I would get those books and open their packages one after another, I would just tick off do's and don'ts in my head, one after another. No matter how nice you think your friends, or God forbid, your kids' artwork is, don't use it in your book. Don't use it in any way in your book. Not in any way, not even for spot illustrations on the inside. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And so on and so forth down the line, right down to, the simplest thing, which is if you put your indie published book about, the lightly fictionalized adventures of your frontierswoman grandmother, if you put that in a padded envelope, and then you wrap that around like a football 8 inches deep in packing tape, and then you put the wrapped packing tape football inside a box, and you wrap that around 8 inches deep in packing tape, so that it literally sometimes took me an hour of steady effort just to get at your book. That is where the historical novel review is where I developed my rule of thumb that the harder it is to get at a book, the less worthwhile it is to do so. Starting there and just moving on from there, I had a roving checklist. So when I got a book like this, and there were a few, I was overjoyed. I'm not 100% sure how much Jane Seymour had what we would call a personality or a psychology to plumb. I'm not 100% sure of that. I'm almost tempted to say that she didn't have one by design, by her family's design. But to the extent that you can know a historical character, this is a terrific attempt to do that. I think it's always really telling that Hilary Mantel, the author of Wolf Hall and its 2 sequels, she famously had, I think, very little sympathy with women. I think there's a term paper or 10 to be written about how women are portrayed in the Cromwell trilogy. And her Jane Seymour is a serpent. That's all. She's just a pretty snake that is venomous that you find in the garden and think at first is harmless. And she's not a human creature at all. The Jane Seymour in this book at least is human. But anyway, very happy to have that. Glad that it's no longer a lacuna in my collection. Now let's move on to the box. And that'll be it. A little unexpected digression on the woes of indie publishing. There are all sorts of indie publishers out there. It has never been easier to publish your work. And it's also never been easier to make your published work. We have an example here of a package that's really hard to get into. I should never have to reach for scissors. Never. And I had to reach for scissors here for something that I guarantee you could have been popped in a nil envelope and sealed without tape. And it would get to me just fine. But I know that there are a lot of indie published authors out there, or would-be indie published authors out there. There are a lot of do's and don'ts. A lot. I should make a video about it. Lord knows I should make a video about AuthorTube, since I have made the grave tactical error of continuing to explore what the state of AuthorTube is today. All right, so what do we got here? This is a box, so it will be a big finished copy of something. Oh, fantastic. Oh, great. Great. All right, this is Jonathan Ives' new biography of Martin Luther King. Huge thing. Big, bright yellow. How wonderful. Fantastic. Okay, fantastic. So this is a May release. This comes out in mid-May. And in the new issue of Big Canoe News, the full-color, once-a-month newspaper from Northern Georgia, where I am the books editor, I am the editor of a 2-page spread of books coverage. And it's quite good, if I do say so myself. There's almost nothing like it left in the country, which is notable on its own. Big Canoe News smoke signals in Northern Georgia may have the smallest circulation of any print newspaper that I've ever been associated with, even in very small town Iowa. But even the ones that are left never risk something like that. And it's a risk that pays off because readers are everywhere. It would pay off for other newspapers too. It's not bad use of real estate. And Big Canoe makes their book section look so good. It just looks so well and invitingly designed. It does nothing about the newspaper. It's like several sections. You get a big pile of something on your doorstep if you subscribe. Nothing about it looks small town at all. Nothing about it looks regional at all. It's a serious newspaper. It's just full of local news, except for my section. My section is not local. As I mentioned the other day in connection with the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, I don't believe there is such a thing as a local reader. So I made it clear right at the beginning to my editor-in-chief that I didn't want to do local coverage. I didn't want local coverage even eating into my space. I wanted to just do a normal book section of a type that used to be normal, but like I said, there's barely anything like it. You have to go 6, 7, 8, even 10 income and subscriber and circulation brackets above us to get anything even close to this. The big papers have it. The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, of course, famously, they all have big, devoted books coverage on the weekend. But find me a paper that has something like that otherwise. The B list, you know, if you've got like, for instance, the LA Times, USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, if you go one level down from there to the B list, well, you've got the Atlanta Constitution, you know, Journal-Constitution. You've got the big paper in Florida, whose name is escaping me. You have Sacramento Bee, Christian Science Monitor. They don't have anything like a dedicated book section. They do a book review here and there. The Boston Globe, for God's sake, has nothing like that. Used to have, doesn't anymore. Big Canoe does, and it's a big, glorious section. The new issue, the May issue, is now online, and those of you who subscribe to the print issue will be getting yours soon. It'll be arriving soon, I would imagine, or in a week. It looks lovely. The new May section is online now. Those of you who would look at it, it looks lovely. And I do a full-length review of this book for the May section. I made a sort of a tactical decision about Big Canoe or a while ago that since I'm not a household name. I'm not holding down a column in an A-list paper or anything like that. I'd love to. I write a column every week. I'd love it to run in an A-list paper. I think I'd get a lot of favorable response. But I'm not a. There's no such thing as a household name recognition critic anymore. But I wouldn't be one anyway. I'm very much a utility player. I'm very much a junkyard dog. But my name is known in publishing circles anyway, and so I made a sort of a tactical decision to do a full-length review of a major new release every month in my own section, even though I would rather spare the space for other people. And this was what I did for May. And I will be, I'll be brooding it around. I'll be flogging it to, social media, making sure that people know that I reviewed this book and that I loved it. I thought it was deeply impressive and serious. By far the best one-volume biography of Martin Luther King that you will be able to get. Those of you who look at the online section will also find a neat little surprise that is BookTube related. A little bit BookTube related. A lot of you will know of the channel Liam's Lyceum. Liam's channel, Liam's Lyceum, which is where he talks every week about the fantasy and the medieval stuff and the science fiction that he reads. Gives you a writing update. He's also a writer, actively submitting work. He also is one of my lone comrades on Poetry Thursday. He reads a poem every Thursday. And he has his inaugural column in the May issue of Big Canoe News, which is also called Liam's Lyceum, in which he rounds up 3 fantasy novels, 3 new releases, and talks about them, hoping for a really nice response. I know that like the fact that there are readers everywhere, there are genre readers everywhere. So I'm hoping that his column goes over well. I'm hoping that people like it. But I reviewed this for the May section of Big Canoe News. So I'm very happy to have the finished copy. And this comes with just an enormous amount of stuff attached to it. Clips from a Q&A with the author. All sorts of clips from... This is going to get reviewed everywhere in May. I think most people will hold off until then. Usually as it's kind of a gentleman's agreement that you don't review a book until you're around spitting air for when it will be in bookstores, if only as a courtesy to your readers. If you praise the book, they're going to want to go out and buy it. If you praise it before it's out in bookstores, you're not helping anybody, especially not helping the author. Because a reader who reads a positive review of a book like this and says, oh, that sounds like something I really want, and goes immediately to Amazon or makes a note and goes to their Barnes & Noble and it's not there, and they're told by the surly lip-ringed help that it's not going to be out until a month from now, I guarantee you 90% of those people will no longer think about this in a month. They'll have moved on to something else that's being praised. That sounds really, really horrible, but it is. I know from both ends of the spectrum, as a reviewer and also as a bookseller, that is definitely true. So for the author's sake, for the publisher's sake, for your own paper's sake, you really want it to come out when the book is coming out. Right on that cusp, when it's brand new and everyone's talking about it. You especially don't want to review a book early if you're dinging it, because that's just totally unfair. The book can't speak for itself until it comes out. So I don't imagine that this has had a lot of stuff yet. I might be one of the earliest reviews. If you're going to break that agreement, if you're going to bend it just a little, like for instance, in my case, I had a monthly deadline and it was May, and if I reviewed it for the next issue, it wouldn't be coming out until it was too late. If you're going to break that agreement, tend to do it for praise. That's at least acceptable as a way to review a book early if you're going to praise it. Totally unsportsmanlike to bash it if it's not out yet. But anyway, that's just a long preamble to the fact that I'm glad to have a copy of this book, but I've already done my duty by it. This pub sheet has a lot of blurbs, advanced blurbs from, who have we got here? Ken Burns, Karen Gray Houston, Lewis Baldwin, lots of other people. Oh wow, fantastic! Well, this is a good sheet, but it doesn't give me anything to tell you. It also has a long list of in-person events that the author will be doing. That's great. But it doesn't matter anyway. You would need a published sheet for a big biography of Martin Luther King Jr. All you need is to know that this is really good. I praised on this channel the daylights out of this author's previous book, a big biography of Muhammad Ali, that I thought was fantastic. I sang his praises to everyone in the publishing world and to any readers I could get my hands on. Same thing with this. Uh, so we'll just let that go. I mean, I don't have anything to read to you here. This is a huge publicity material sheet kit, but it's not anything to help you with, and you don't need the help anyway. So this really became just me talking about Big Canoe News because I am reviewing this. I reviewed this for Big Canoe News. And I'm going to keep that up. I did that strategy of doing a big mainstream review myself at full length uh, as a way of drawing attention, a way of getting the publishing world at least to know that there is a big active book section out there. The publishing world has largely written off local small newspapers because the local small newspapers either tend to have no books coverage at all, or their books coverage tends to be local. Local author writes a memoir, that sort of thing. And you want to boost the local writing community. Like I mentioned yesterday, that is perfectly understandable as an editorial approach, but the publishing industry isn't going to be interested in it. Obviously, a lot of that stuff will be self-published anyway. So the mainstream publishing industry in Manhattan, they're very much going to want to know. I would think my gamble was that they would very much want to know that there was a big mainstream book review section out there in the world. And they did. They do want to know that. As one of you pointed out to me, I didn't notice at first that Big Canoe News is getting its first cover blurb. I think it's getting its first cover blurb on a book in the spring. So we shall see. We shall see. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it for at least a few more issues. Not only because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do. But, I mean, I get a lot more attention at Open Letters Review than I would at Big Canoe News. But there's something about your review being in a print newspaper, especially such a well-designed one. That is really, it's an old-fashioned joy, but it is a definite joy. I'm going to keep doing it at least for a few more months. So I will pick one of the biggest, most important releases for June and do that for the June issue. But my main joy, I mean, that's great, and I'm glad to have this, but my main joy for our May issue is Liam's Lyceum. The column Liam's Lyceum makes its debut. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. This is going on just rambly. If I have a link to the online version of Big Canoe News that I can in any way make navigable, the separate sections don't have separate URLs. If I can make it comprehensible, then I will link it because I definitely want you to take a look at it. Although I would be remiss as an editor on the paper. I would be remiss if I didn't urge you to take out a print subscription. The cost is not going to break the bank, and you will be getting a a 2-page spread of books coverage, even if you get nothing else out of the paper. I bet you would. I bet you'd enjoy a lot of it. But I would urge you to take out a print subscription if it appeals to you. And once again, I want to stress, if you take out a print subscription and you do it because of me, feel free to let the paper know that. That is gold to anyone, to any writer, to any editor at all. That is gold for the paper to know that. My standing is pretty firm with Big Canoe News. I'm pretty firm. We've already won an award, and I'd like to win a couple of much higher profile rewards and get higher profile blurbs. But it never hurts. So feel free, if you've done that, feel free to let my editor know. But anyway, that is the mail. A big, gigantic biography of Martin Luther King Jr. Cannot praise this highly enough. It really needs to be on your spring list. And Jane the Queen, which is biographical historical fiction about Jane Seymour. Very varied. Not the sum total of the stuff that I've got in the mail, but it will have to do for now. but I will wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.